Hey everybody, welcome to my channel. My name is Adam. I am an artist, author, and filmmaker, 22-year veteran of the Hollywood filmmaking industry, founder of the largest studio-level writers lab in Los Angeles, the most intelligent, articulate, and yet foolish man, and a great, big troublemaker. So I am presenting this interview with the great Ethan Van Sciver as evidence that he has given me personal permission to rip off the syntax of his intro. Ethan Van Sciver, you know, is the owner of the Comic Artist Pro Secrets YouTube channel. He is a 26-year veteran of the comic book industry. He is the most charming, eloquent, elegant, and yet humble man, a great big Star Wars fan, and a trusted, believe it or not, a trusted member of the media. So now that we got both of our intros out of the way, Ethan was nice enough to sit down and have a chat with me. I've been doing some videos on my personal channel about Comicsgate. I'm interested in Comicsgate for my own personal reasons. I am going to be crowdfunding a book. I've been working with another artist, a fellow artist. We've been collaborating on this book. I wrote it. She is doing most of the drawing. I am overseeing it and producing it. So Ethan was nice enough to sit down and have a chat with a fellow artist, which was a lot of fun. A lot of people have been telling me in these videos that Comicsgate is over, that I'm late to the party, that this is a done deal, signed, sealed, and delivered. But I don't understand that, because I think we're really midstream here. Like, we're in the middle of this thing. Ethan Van Sciver just did a very successful crowdfunding campaign for Cyberfrog. The book was late. There was a lot of controversy over that, but he's finally delivered and people are happy with the product. It looks amazing. The chromium cover, I guess, is to die for. I have not seen it myself, but I hear tell that it's pretty amazing. So that's incredible. The book made over $1 million, and there are a bunch of other Comicsgate people involved that originally got under the hashtag of Comicsgate, but have left Comicsgate over infighting. So we're midstream here, because everyone involved in this situation is going to be crowdfunding future books. And we don't necessarily know how that crowdfunding is going to go for the people who are staying with Comicsgate, for the people who left Comicsgate. Is Ethan's second book going to be bigger than his first book? Is it going to be less than? I mean, there's all these unanswered questions. I feel like the story has just begun. So with that in mind, I give you my interview with the great and humble Ethan Van Sciver. So you probably have the same outlook as me. Like, I just assume if I'm talking to someone on the internet, I'm being recorded. Correct?
Yeah. I mean, at this point, you know, and you learn this lesson pretty quickly, all of your private messages and interactions, they're going to come out. So
exactly.
Be careful what you say. And if you're gonna get angry and you're gonna say some stuff, it's gonna come out, and just be prepared for that. So there are a few things that I've said in private, especially one in particular when I was you know, in the early days of Comicsgate, when Antarctic Press finally canceled your boy Zach's, you know, contract for Jawbreakers. And I said, and I was furious. I was drinking. I was in a private room with everybody. I was so pissed off, and everything just seemed like we were up against, you know, just the tides all the time. It all just seemed impossible. And I was drinking, and those guys from Antarctic actually had approached me about 2 weeks before and said, you know, we're setting up to become the new publisher for Republicans in comics. So we'd like to publish Cyberfrog. And I said, I'll think about that. You know, we'll see. And I understand that Zach is thinking about going with you guys, so that's good. And I said, you FAGGOTs wish, you know, in private. Okay.
Sin against humanity.
Yeah. That comes out. That whole clip, or that little piece of dialogue, is circulating the net. Like, Ethan says the FAGG word, you know, in private all the time. Not too often, just when I'm drunk and really, really, really angry. And so, yeah, that's a lesson. Watch what you say in private, because it will be splashed across the headlines at some point.
Isn't it funny, because it really is kind of a form of political correctness? Like, even in privacy, in private, it's a form of political correctness, because so much of our interactions are over the internet. Like, it seems like my wife is the only one that I talk to in person to person anymore.
Yeah. It really, well, and here's the thing about the internet: everything's permanent. It's like, I could have just said that offhand to you, when that was happening, and it just would have disappeared into the ethos. It just would have vanished into nothingness, and there'd be no proof that no, there's proof in writing that will remain for the rest of my life. That in that moment, I said something that was hurtful to a marginalized group. I used a slur. So I mean, that's the thing. I mean, that's the danger of the internet, and I think it's changing a lot of the way that we speak and interact with each other. And I think it's also making us very. I think it's making us edgy in a way, in a lot of ways. I think it makes us kind of suspicious of one another, and super careful with our conversations. I think that's probably a good thing, though, in some ways. In other ways, it's I don't know. It creates a neurosis, I guess.
So you mean more paranoid? I think of edgy as edgy in the good way, like pushing boundaries. As artists, we always want to push those boundaries. But you mean like look over your shoulder, edgy?
That's what I mean right now. Yeah. I mean, I'm in a position where I'm always kind of looking over my shoulder a little bit. I don't want to. I don't want to look over my shoulder. But that's kind of where I find myself now, I guess.
Yeah, who can blame you? So I sent you some questions. I want to talk about the future of Comicsgate. I've been making some videos that people seem interested in, and I have a very interesting. I've been following the SJW stuff, but not really following Comicsgate. But I'm interested because so much of it aligns perfectly with my understanding of critical theory and stereotype threat. All the stuff that I'm seeing on the academic side, you guys are experiencing kind of in the trenches. So I'm curious. I'm kind of late to the party on Comicsgate. It seems like Comicsgate was a really big thing, and correct me if I'm wrong about any of this, but Comicsgate seems like it was a really big thing. There was a kind of a exuberance about it, and then now you guys have had some successful crowdfunding campaigns. Your book Cyberfrog was a massive success. Obviously, the people on the social justice side are denigrating it. I would argue they're denigrating it more for political reasons than actually they're offended by the content. And now Comicsgate is going through kind of maybe a lull. There's some infighting, and that's where we're at today. But I'm curious what the future of Comicsgate is, and is that a fair representation of the past?
Yeah, I think so. I think a lot of people are confused about what Comicsgate means. I think there's some argument about that. I just know what it means to me. I know what it means, what my purpose within Comicsgate always has been, and that's been consistent. What is the future of Comicsgate? I mean, look, the energy behind this movement is going to dissipate. I think that's inevitable, and it's. I think another YouTuber, Sweetcast, put it really well. He said a movement is like a crashing wave. It hits the shore and eventually it dissipates. The energy from that movement goes. So what's critical is what we build from the strength of that energy. And my ambition is to use the energy behind Comicsgate and the passion behind the counter argument to what's going on right now. I mean, right now the comic book industry has been fully hijacked by social justice warriors. The entire purpose of comic books now seems to be to sell social justice and leftism and politics. It's no longer become something about, it's not about telling stories anymore. It's not about fun. It's not about anything that people would want to, like, you can't hide these comics from your mom. There's no reason to comics used to be something that you had to keep hidden from your parents. They were scandalous. They were dirty. They were bloody, violent, sexy. They were fun. They were fun. They were transgressive in so many different ways. The best of comics. Sex and violence And I think that has become, I think that's been scaled back to become this kind of uh, fuchsia LGBTQ boring nightmare world, where all of those things have been washed away, and now we are just kind of in this sort of ironic test pattern, within the comic book storytelling world. I think the people who are actually making these comics don't really like comics. That's my own suspicion. I don't think they like or respect superheroes or comics. I think they see this as turf to be conquered. So my thing is, I'm just one guy. I remember what I used to love about comics when I was 13, when I was the most energized about the world of superheroes, and that's what I'm endeavoring to recreate for myself and for others who feel the same way that I do. What comes out of this movement? What comes out of this movement, hopefully, is a new way to sell, distribute, and market comic books that don't have to answer to this these social justice warriors, these gatekeepers of the mainstream. As the comic book industry continues to decline, I think the alternative needs to rise up. There's a great opportunity here for us to kind of stand up and build something new. So I guess Comicsgate will disappear. Eventually. I will always call myself Comicsgate. Just like my parents still call themselves hippies. I will always call myself a comic skater, even when Comicsgate isn't a thing anymore. And the end result of that will be Cyberfrog. It will be all caps comics. It will be a little tiny imprint that doesn't cater to SJW whims. It doesn't cater to the PC crowd. It caters to creative people who want to do comic books that will appeal to large stadiums full of rock and roll fans, rather than, these just penisless parakeet males who submit to these feminists. I don't understand their world. I don't understand it. I don't respect it. I don't like their comics, and I want to offer an alternative.
Well, Ethan, I don't know if you know this, but women are marginalized people in the world, and that we have to make sure that all of our characters don't belittle these marginalized people. If we write characters that denigrate marginalized people, then Susie might feel like she doesn't. Hopefully, I'm talking in jest here. Like my understanding of Comicsgate is Comicsgate was a reaction to political correctness in comic books, and that political correctness is moving through the system. Now it's getting into movies as well. I think one of the reasons why Star Wars was such an abject failure was because the principles of social justice came before good storytelling. Like, the social justice side seems to buy into this idea that there's something called stereotype threat, that if you make a character that glorifies some homophobe, then that will create more homophobes in society, and therefore that character can't exist. So this is like telling storytellers, you have to tie both hands behind your back. You have to come to the High Council and find out if your character is acceptable or not before we will okay your project, which I think is it's a big limitation on the ability of storytelling.
Yeah, you're referring to the Joker, I guess. I mean, the Joker movie, just a perfect example of that.
Well, I didn't see it yet, so I don't know.
I haven't seen it either, okay. and it doesn't matter. I'm talking about people's reactions before they saw it either. Nobody saw it, and they decided that this was a movie that was going to glorify and create more incels, murderous incels. Strange, very strange. You were talking about marginalized people, women being marginalized, and we can't do. Well, and you were talking in jest, but I was actually taking you seriously and thinking about it, because I quite agree. I don't want to, use comics to mistreat people who are gay or women or people of color. I think that's something that needs to be considered. I also don't want to pander to them. And if I create characters that are gay or my female characters, they need to have integrity. People of color, I'm not trying to say, I don't want it to ever be felt that I am afraid to confront any of these people as actual people, And I'm still kind of an amateur writer, of course. I'm learning how to write. I'm along. This is Cyberfrog Blood Honey was the first book that I wrote in ages, and 20 or 30 years. I'm still learning how to write, but I hate this idea that the infallibility of these marginalized characters as they're presented in these comics, they're all perfect. They are. They all seem to be written in a way to say, we're sorry. We're sorry for any perceived slights that you may have felt in our comic books, and we're here to correct them by showing an idealized version of you in which you are better than us, and you are infallible and perfect and a delight. These aren't stories; these aren't real characters. These are apologies.
Yeah.
6-panel apologies. I don't think people want them. I don't think people want to read them. And I also I note that many times these characters come out of the brains of white males, and I'm just like, I don't understand how Brian Michael Bendis has written what now. Riri Williams. He's got this new character over there. He's got Teen Lantern over at DC Comics. He's got all these characters. They're all the same. It's a teenage black girl with poofy hair, and she's super smart every single time. It's as if to say, why is it that white males want to do this? What are they saying? What is Brian Michael Bendis saying? That every single one of his black characters is a super genius. Why? And that's why wouldn't he make them super strong? Why wouldn't he make them something else, super athletic, powerful in a different way? Why is it that Brian Michael Bendis thinks that what these people want, his characters and the people that he's representing, is super intelligence? It just seems to be odd that's a recurring theme with him and these characters. It's odd. It says a lot more about him than it does about what the community wants and what comic book fans want to read.
Yeah.
I don't understand. I mean, all of these prejudices and weird ideas come out accidentally. Subconsciously in these characters, and I consider that. I mean, just that alone, I consider to be somewhat racist. I mean, I gotta say, I consider that to be very, very strange. That you have the same character over and over again in every company that you go to. She's a woman of color, and her power is she's super smart. It's odd. I find it to be troubling. At the same time, I feel like there's room to reconsider the way that we present women, the way that we present, people of color. I think diversity is important. I think you should consider presenting the world the way the world actually looks in your comics and in your movies. And my world is full of. I live in New Jersey. My world is full of people of all different colors, all different kinds. Cyberfrog takes place in New Jersey. It's important that we reflect that we reflect the reality as it is. It should be incidental. I don't know if it needs to be intentional, purposeful, in order to make a statement. I find those things to be kind of weird. I don't know.
Well, there's two things that are going on here, the way that I see it, because there is also this social justice sort of orthodoxy forming, and people are gaining status in the social justice community by calling out infractions in social justice. And social justice, in my opinion, it's just this orthodoxy that all characters must serve to elevate marginalized people, particularly women, blacks, LGBT. And what you're saying, I completely agree with. Like, we shouldn't be denigrating these characters, but there's a principle in storytelling called the character arc. It's this very ancient idea that the character starts off, at the bottom of the hierarchy and struggles their way to the top, right?
Right.
But how do you start a story if you have to start your character as a super genius? Like, how did they become? Where's the origin story for the born a super genius? I mean, this is where the Mary Sue comes from, because there's this orthodoxy that's creeped into storytelling, into Hollywood, into comic books. They're like, if we show a woman struggling, little Susie is going to think that women are bad at things and she's not going to want to try. So we have to show women, empowered. It's almost like the opposite of the stereotype. It's like they've taken the stereotype of, the ditzy blonde from the 50s and they've turned it on its head.
Yeah, I wonder if that's something. I immediately want to think that is, that is that's the work of, again, white men, which in and of itself is a form of white supremacy, which is something that they talk about a lot. White people declaring what people of color should be, white people creating these characters that have no human flaws, and that do not have to experience struggle, do not have to go through a character arc in order to obtain anything. It's almost like you've got white people as God granting these people, a break from their problems, no problems, taking their problems away as characters. So I find that to be weird. And yeah, I do agree. I really, really like the way that you put that about just elevating. Comics right now are attempting to elevate marginalized people through fiction. I don't know if that reflects. I mean, you're trying to reflect and represent the reality of the lives of these people, and I just don't know if that does it. I don't know who can relate to. I don't know who can relate to super genius girl who takes an HP laptop and hacks into does Oa have a database and steals a Green Lantern ring and becomes a Green Lantern, a bootleg Green Lantern. I don't know who relates to that. I don't know who looks at that and goes, yeah, that's me. I can relate to Peter Parker. I can even relate to Bruce Wayne. I can relate to Superman. I can relate to all of these characters because they're so well drawn. They're so well thought out. I think that I don't see these characters being created anymore. What's going to be interesting, and I got to do a video about this, is DC Comics' new 5G situation, their new 5G initiative, where they're throwing away all their classic characters and creating new ones from the ground up. So a brand new Wonder Woman, a brand new Superman.
What?
Changing it. Yes. I'm so excited about it. I've got to read everything and do a video about it. It just reeks of, okay, we got to cancel everything and relaunch again. And I worked there for so long. This is just another one of those trips. This is a really, really terrible idea. And I cannot wait. Can't wait to see this batch of creative people rethinking and relaunching Batman, Wonder Woman, and Superman. Be fantastic.
What do you have control of the Comicsgate name? I watched some videos where there was some conflict over ownership.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, actually, all right. So let's tell that story because that's an interesting thing. Comicsgate early on struggled with, and by the way, this is all kind of over with now. It's kind of nice. Comicsgate has become kind of a comfortable thing. We're no longer fighting SJWs every single day. We're no longer fighting in the media to protect ourselves from being denigrated as white supremacists or anti-Semites. None of that's happening anymore. But that was a daily reality. Social justice warriors are insidious in that they have ties to the media, ties to irresponsible, garbage, left-wing propaganda websites that can ruin your life. So they were doing this on a daily basis. They would write these articles that would say that this person in Comicsgate has ties to this person who's a white nationalist, and therefore, Comicsgate is a white supremacist organization that exists to marginalize and harass women. Just garbage, just pure garbage. But we were constantly on defense. In this melee, and by the way, more and more people were coming and joining up with Comicsgate, but we're worried about being, forced to associate with some of these politically extreme elements that were kind of like sharks circling what we were building here. One of those people was Vox Day, and Vox Day is the Lex Luthor of the comic book industry, I would say. He's not really. He doesn't really respect comics. He's not interested in comics. He's a culture warrior from the far right. And Vox Day early on created his own version of Comicsgate, his own idea of Comicsgate, which was, all right, so you guys are coming from the far left. I'm going to hit you from the far right. I'm going to crowdfund this comic book, and I'm going to do everything within my power to agitate you. So my super heroine is going to have big boobies. She's going to be a beautiful, beautiful woman who wears short shorts, and she's going to have a Confederate flag that she's going to wave. I mean, yeah. She's going to be called Rebel. You know what I mean? And so he crowdfunded this, and it did very well. It raised $250,000.
Whoa!
I remember I had Vox Day on my show. I was going through this crowdfund with him. I'm like, what are all these like $5,000 donations that you're getting? What are these big chunks of money coming in here? The people aren't just buying your comic; they're giving you like thousands of dollars in chunks. I don't understand that. And he was like, well, little sketchy about that. But in any case, Vox Day did not like my version of Comicsgate. My attitude, my ideas about Comicsgate were, no, the way to beat social justice warriors is to simply succeed. The way to beat them is not to say, it's not the left-wing ideas that are, more palatable to the American people. It's right-wing ideas that are more palatable to them. That's an argument that we have, every single year in November. It's not really an argument that you can really win on any large margin. So what if we just say, we're going to try to appeal to everybody. We're going to pull the politics out of comics. We're going to pull the divisive issues outside of comics, and we're just going to do fun superhero comics that appeal to the right and the left, and then see how that goes. That is the way to win. The way to beat social justice warriors is to win. It's just to put your comics out there. No social justice, no PC, and then just rake in enormous amounts of money. That's how to do it. Well, Vox disagreed with me, and Vox decided to go ahead and try to create a comic book imprint called Comicsgate Comics. He was going to do Comicsgate Comics or Comicsgate Press or something like that. And he put it out there. He just kind of said, comic skaters should come to me and I will publish them. I have, a publishing imprint. I have fulfillment house, distribution. So if you're Comicsgate, come to Vox Day. Come to Daddy Vox Day and let me fix it for you. Let me do it for you. Now, everybody was scared. Everybody that within my sort of, community of Comicsgate was kind of worried. We talk in big DM chat rooms. Vox Day is trying to slime us, make us look like we're far right wingers. Vox Day, of course, is, from what I understand, I saw him use the 14 words to describe his own personal philosophy. These are things that we don't want to associate with. And we don't want other people to be forced to associate with Vox Day and his views. So I consulted a lawyer. I took some of my Cyberfrog money and I hired a lawyer. And, he said, look, if you want to push this, you've been doing a show called Comicsgate Live. Have you made money from that show? And I said, yes, sir. He said, you have a claim of copyright for the word Comicsgate. If you want to push that. And so I went back to everybody in the little green room and I said, okay, the way to deal with this is I can claim ownership over the word Comicsgate if I want to, because I've monetized it before anyone else. Now, some people love the idea. Some people did not love the idea. Some people said it's going to look like you're trying to commandeer Comicsgate, as a movement and not just the word. People are going to misunderstand that. And I said, well, they're going to misunderstand it. Maybe, but for now, let's do this and send Vox Day a cease and desist and tell him that I own the word Comicsgate and I need you guys to agree with me. I need the community to agree with me. So most of them did. Most of them kind of just said, yeah, this is our, this is what we think. And Vox Day backed down. We threatened to sue him. And he decided he wasn't going to do his Comicsgate imprint. That left a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths who weren't there. There are still clips of me in private saying, everybody get in line with this. This is what we're going to be doing. This is how we're going to be attacking this problem. Now, do I own Comicsgate? Actually, a fellow named Critias went out and trademarked it for himself. He was in our community. So if you look at if you actually look it up, Critias owns Comicsgate. He owns the word Comicsgate. And I suppose I could sue Critias. But I like that he owns it. I think he's kind of impartial. I think that it's in good hands. And basically, what I said to everyone after this was over was, I do not own Comicsgate. Okay, I return it. Even if I do, I return it to everybody. Okay, so it's everybody's. It's not mine. Feel free to use it, but we will protect it if wrong elements come in and try to make Comicsgate a political right-wing or far left-wing movement. We will not allow these people to force association with any kind of extremist politics. It's the opposite of what Comicsgate is meant to be. So that's the story behind it.
My feeling of Comicsgate, and I'm kind of looking at it from a creator's perspective, because immediately I want to crowdfund a book, and I'm thinking, am I Comicsgate? Am I not Comicsgate? Well, what do these guys stand for? Are they far right Nazis? Are they blue-haired social justice warriors? Like, what am I putting my name on? So my examination of it is I kind of feel like it's storytelling above politics. And I know, like, you've made an argument, I've heard you make the argument before, that of taking politics out of story. And I don't know that I necessarily agree with that. Where I think the problem is elevating politics above storytelling, where politics are more important than the storytelling. When, the story must serve this political orthodoxy, and the social justice side is the one that's doing it most now, and you can see it. Because they're saying, all of your characters must conform to the social justice orthodoxy. They must elevate marginalized people. They can't denigrate marginalized people. It's really all comes back to, fighting for the rights of the oppressed. That's where their philosophy comes from. So I understand where you're coming from, and I see like a lot of, like, things are so politically toxic right now that I think, like, your gut intuition about not just taking politics out of the equation, I think, is completely correct. But I'm very interested in, like, clarifying that, what Comicsgate stands for. So what do you think Comicsgate stands for, like, right now, philosophically?
I think that Comicsgate stands for entertainment over propaganda.
Okay.
I think that's what it stands for. And I think that, if you want to do a book that's political, I mean, I think you certainly could. I think that at this point, there's a sense of lecturing and hectoring and scolding that exists in comics through use of divisive politics, and that needs to go. We want to be customer first. We want to entertain customers. So I mean, look, subtle politics are going to creep into everything. They just are. Your point of view as a creator is going to come out in your work. The question is, is it something that's ambiguous? Is it something that people can draw different conclusions from? I think ultimately that's the most interesting kind of art to me. I always use Captain America as an example for this. I mean, Captain America is a book that's political but ambiguous. What is America? What does America mean to you? It means different things to different people. Captain America should represent whatever is good, whatever you consider to be great and wonderful about America, no matter what side of the aisle you vote from. And that's a difficult thing. That takes discipline. That takes discipline for a creator to actually do. But I think, I think it's just this sense of avoiding disenfranchising people or scolding people or making people feel not included or lectured to in your comics. I think that's the best way to put it.
It's so funny. Your message is sounds completely progressive. It's like inclusion. Don't piss people off for stupid reasons. So it's funny.
You would think so.
Yeah,
I mean,
totally.
You would think that would be a progressive idea or a liberal idea.
Yeah, very much so.
In a lot of ways, I would consider myself to be a John F. Kennedy kind of conservative liberal in that sense, just right, it's centrist. The idea ultimately, though, is about capitalism. The idea is about the fact that you have, this audience out there that wants to enjoy comics, that just really want to come back to enjoying this creative medium and have a good time reading comic books, but feel excluded for various reasons, or just feel like, look, this isn't for me. I am not here to read propaganda pamphlets disguised as superhero stories. The love isn't there. The excitement isn't there. I feel like I've left the industry. Ultimately, all of our goals are to make money. I mean, people, we want to actually create a product that serves the interests and the needs of people who feel disenfranchised from the comic book industry right now.
I'm curious if you could go back to the industry, because it seems that you've stepped out and took some risk with your career.
Yeah, I'm still on the fringes of it. I don't want people to think that like I have stepped completely away from the comic book industry as it is, the mainstream comic book industry. My toe is still in there. I still do what I want to do. Of course, I'm working with Dynamite Comics, doing these Vampirella variant covers. I'm speaking to another company right now about licensing a rather big property and bringing it over to All Caps Comics. I don't want people to think that, like the mainstream comic book industry is something that I want to avoid. I just want to work within it. If I do work within it on my own terms as Comicsgate. I want Comicsgate to become an inevitability. Things do have to change. So I'm not going to change. The industry is going to change out of necessity, or it's going to disappear. Could I go back? I think I've been blacklisted from Marvel and DC. I think that's the truth. I think that I've broken a code of ethics that they have. Whether it was, it's never been something that's been spoken, but you stand by your fellow creators in the comic book industry, even when they're doing wrong. I knew that when I was going to come out in support of Richard C. Meyer publicly and say that what he was saying was true, and I agreed with him 100%. I knew that I was burning a bridge. That was a permanent thing that I was doing. Can that change? It might change over the course of decades. You know what I mean? Like eventually the comic book industry, were it to survive, were it to grow, were it to prosper again, which I can't imagine. That could change. But as of right now, if I tried to work at Marvel or DC, I'm certain that even if editors were sympathetic, pressure from the creator community would make it impossible. Yeah.
And Richard C. Myers is your boy Zach, right? Diversity in Comics. Like, you feel he's been somewhat maligned by the media unfairly, correct?
Yes. Yeah. I think that's correct.
Yeah,
most definitely. He's not been perfect. None of us are. We make mistakes. But I think they've hobgoblinized this guy. I will say that he speaks the truth. I mean, he is a Cassandra. Crying out about the mistakes, the doom that the comic book industry faces, standing on the deck of the Titanic and saying "iceberg dead ahead, dummies," is what he's been doing all along. And they don't listen to him. They don't want to listen to him for various reasons. But he has, I think he's had his life turned upside down. I mean, really think about that. We talk about the comic book industry just being this frivolous thing. Is it important? It's a dying niche entertainment industry. And yet, you can have your life destroyed by explaining why it is any one of those things, by actually articulating on a daily basis on YouTube to an audience of 40,000 people why the comic book industry is a dying niche, overly politicized industry that is about to meet its doom. It will destroy your life. It's a crazy thing. These people will they'll find out who you are. They'll contact your employers. They'll contact your family. They'll contact your loved ones. They will harass you out of work. They'll harass you out of friendships. They will make it impossible for you to just live like a normal human being over whether or not Wonder Woman should be transgendered. It's very, very strange. And I think all of those things happened to Richard C. Meyer, who I now call you boy Zach because I don't want to use his name too much. We call him Zach simply for standing up and bravely pointing out the truth. And I think he's been, backed into a corner, back down. And as he has, I have decided that I'm going to, pick up the flag and keep pushing forward for him, which is where I think that I am right now.
So I'm curious because you told a great story about the taking over the Comicsgate name, basically Vox Day's hostile takeover of the Comicsgate name, and your attempt to marshal it back. How in this collective, how many people are there in this group of comics creators? Is it big? Is it small? Is it like the secret cabal? I mean, how many people are in the green room there? Like how many people are you arguing
know.
with?
I mean, maybe back then 25 or 30.
Okay. I mean, so that's substantial.
Yeah. These are people who I would say, and they were in the green room because I knew them and found them to be entertaining, and so I would invite them onto my show. It's like that's what the green room ultimately was. It didn't really mean any number of this wasn't the extent of Comicsgate. It was just the people who were invited onto my YouTube show at the time, whenever they could. I would drop the link in there and just say, hey, I'm gonna go live, who wants to come on?
So where do you see Comicsgate going from here? You're flirting with, I sense that you want to make it something reputable, that you want to you want to have as many talented creators involved that are not afraid to use the name. Like the whole idea of getting Vox Day out of the picture is because you don't want that far right political thing tainting the respectability of the hashtag.
Yeah. Well, I think I don't want I don't care if more creators join me. Mm-hmm. They don't have to fight this fight. As I said before, I think the Comicsgate is that crashing wave. It's not going to exist, eventually. What's going to exist is what we've built, from this movement, from the energy of this movement. And that includes all caps comics. Frankly, everyone is allowed, everyone should take the energy from this movement if that's what you feel, if this is what you believe, and build something like I am building. I was worried about the fans. I was worried about customers. I was worried about people saying, maybe I shouldn't be buying Cyberfrog. Maybe I shouldn't be buying Red Rooster, Jawbreakers, Lone Star, because it's associated with Vox Day. Mm-hmm. And therefore, it must contain far right-wing politics, which none of our books do. So that was my concern. Other creators can come on and fight this fight or not. I'm more concerned about the end result, flattening out the social justice warrior phenomenon, which I consider to be akin to the witch hunts of the 1950s, communist witch hunts of the 1950s, even though there were witches, weren't there?
I don't know if they found any, actually.
They found a few. They found quite a few. Flattening that out and just saying, look, let's build something new. Let's establish a new platform, then more creators can come on board.
You had a brief departure with do you need, if you got to take a moment?
Huh?
No. I thought you said something to someone. Why? You had a brief departure from Comicsgate and you came back again. Can you talk about that?
Sure. That was a very strange argument that I was having with former Comicsgaters. Mm-hmm. Look, I mean, all of this is being established. Everyone is fighting over a word. They're fighting over possession of the word Comicsgate. And I don't know why, really. The word Comicsgate was applied to us as an insult. It was given to this situation by left-wingers who considered anyone opposing what they were doing to the comic book industry to be a scandal. And then they misrepresented the motivations of people who opposed them as just pure bigotry, of course. I mean, the usual rigmarole. And they called it Comicsgate. So over time, that actually became a term that was applied negatively. This guy's Comicsgate. And we said, I said early on, I don't think Comicsgate's a thing. I don't see why we can't figure this out. I was very naive, I think, in 2017 about what all this was. And then finally, I just said, no, you know what? I am Comicsgate. I'm just going to come out and say it. I still had 5 issues that I owed DC Comics under my contract. I said, I'm fucking Comicsgate. Okay. All of this is true. I'm experiencing harassment from social justice warriors. There is something very strange and conspiratorial here that I'm just feeling the outline of right now. And I can sense it. I know it's there. And I remember talking to Dan DiDio on the phone about this and thinking, I was like, I'm going to tell Dan what's going on here. And I know I'm going to sound crazy, but I'm going to tell him. I was like, Dan, you're going to think this is nuts. But and I'm not sure you're going to believe this, but there is a conspiracy, Dan.
Famous last words.
I said, there's a conspiracy of far left-wing activists that work within Marvel Comics and on the fringes of the comic book industry that work in secret whisper network campaigns to destroy the careers of people who want to stop them from changing comic books into social justice pablum. And I have irritated these people, and they're trying to destroy my life. Would you believe that, Dan? And he said, Ethan, he said, what did he say? He said, you wouldn't believe what I believe, is what he said to me. So Dan knew it. Dan knew all about this. And to me, it was just like, I thought he was going to be like, all right, you're nuts. Okay, but clearly this is true. With the benefit of a year's hindsight, with a year's worth of experiencing this, a year and a half, I think, since that conversation, this is all true and then some. And I think anybody who actually works within the comic book industry and has inside knowledge of these characters, these players, their influence, they know about it. Dan knew about it then. And Dan knew about it to the extent that he told me, Ethan, take a break and come back in June. And I said, well, June? He said, yeah, you need to take a break and come back in June. Why? Well, June, Diane Whelan Nelson stepped down. And she was somebody who was speaking directly to social justice warriors and sending them messages about me. She was the president of DC Comics. And she left in June. This was February. Dan told me come back in June. He knew she was going. He knew she'd been fired because of the Justice League movie. So, wow. I mean, this stuff is deep. This stuff is heavy. This stuff is the comic book industry is thoroughly, infiltrated by these people, and they're aware of it. They're aware of the problems. But somebody, most of these people have to serve this influence. They have to. I had Dan tell me one time. He said, Ethan, I just want to say to you, I see some of the stuff you're saying on the internet. He said this in a meeting with Jim Lee and everybody on the phone with me. Everybody's there. He goes, that's not who we are. I said, are you quoting Barack Obama at me right now as you're telling me what I'm allowed to say on the internet? That's not who we are. Who is DC Comics? What is this organization? What is Warner Brothers? What are they instructing you?
So not to interrupt here, but are they getting upset about your behavior online? This is not anything to do with what's going on at work, right? This is all outside of work behavior.
Most certainly.
Okay. Yeah. Wow.
Most certainly. Wow. Me being an outspoken Trump supporter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they're making it goes back to the same ideology that we're talking about. The reason why they can say anyone who voted for Trump is a racist is because Trump came out and made these comments that they've said we're disparaging of Mexican people and disparaging. So they basically are making the same exact argument that they're making in the comic book argument that we cannot denigrate marginalized people. Trump has denigrated marginalized people. Therefore, anybody who votes for Trump is a racist. That's the argument that they're making. It all comes from the central philosophy, the same philosophy that's driving the comic book stories. So it's just, it's interesting to me that it all kind of ties together. But
it's also interesting that the argument about whether Trump actually did denigrate.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, let's not have that argument.
I mean, that's a whole other thing. The question is, did he or didn't he? And in this case, again, within Comicsgate, did your boy Zach denigrate marginalized people or not? And right. That's a whole different,
So what is that story? What are they saying? Because I know about the Jim Jeffries piece where they basically did some creative editing to make him look
like a racist buffoon.
Yeah, exactly. But that's I mean, they're maligning his character. We can all see what's going on. I've never seen a racist thing out of him.
No, I think Zach goes and attacks individuals. And when I say attacks, I mean criticizes.
Right. So if they're a woman or a person of color, then all of a sudden it gets conflated with racism, even though you're going after the individual.
One individual. We've got Mags Visaggio saying crazy things on Twitter, saying crazy far left-wing things, threatening violence against cis white males or all cis people in general. That's something that needs to be brought up, So therefore, Zach hates trans people. If you attack one single individual, you seem to be attacking an entire marginalized group. That is the structure of the way that they've set things up. That is That is their intersectionalism. That's all, their religious belief. These individuals are protected as a class. Zach may as well have gone out and shot a cheetah when he criticized, Mags Visaggio.
He'd be in less trouble, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's ridiculous. These people are so protected. They live in such a bubble that they're immune to criticism. They will be their antibodies will come out and attack you if you ever mention that. Maybe suggesting on Twitter that hitting people in the teeth with a baseball bat is probably not appropriate and probably doesn't sell comics. So that's your boy Zach, and they built up a whole thing about him. Well, they did it to me too, and I knew this because I would go online, and again, this is 2017 me. This is extremely naive Ethan Van Sciver. I have become a vampire since then. It's like I've become hardened. Okay, that guy's dead. I am the undead version of Ethan Van Sciver now. And 2017, I'm looking up my name on Twitter, and I'm seeing this guy. Lots of people, they're all like furries, these weird kind of LGBTQ kind of characters that are calling me a Nazi, and they all have pink ponies as avatars and stuff. I'm like, what the fuck is this? There's this one guy, Daryl Ayo, who's a black guy, and he is talking about me as though he knows me, and that he knows for a fact that I'm a white supremacist and that I worship Hitler. And I'm just like, this doesn't make any sense to me. I don't know why anybody would say this about me. It's odd. And so then a few months later, I watched this guy continue to do this. John Malin comes out and he makes his statement about the social justice warriors, the thing that got him ultimately blacklisted from Marvel Comics. And Daryl Ayo basically came out and said, so it looks like John Malin's a Nazi. I guess we're going to be canceling him too now, right? And I said, Zach actually dinged my email and said, dude, they're doing it to John Malin. You got to do something about this. Wake up. So I got out of bed and I called John Malin. I said, let's go live. I want to find out what's going on with you. And while I did that, I put a challenge out on Twitter. I said, Daryl Ayo, if you want to come on here and talk to us about what you believe, we believe, and let's have a debate, let's have a conversation about it, that would be great. We want to prove to you that we mean you no harm. We're not white supremacists. We just disagree about this and that. Super, super naive, Adam. Mm-hmm. Super stupid. Do not ever do this. Do not try to engage SJWs in conversation. They will turn it into assault, which is what they did. So I'm on there talking to John Malin, and Daryl Ayo is spinning my invitation to debate whether or not we are white supremacists as an attack on him personally. And wow. He is super SJW. So he is connected in ways that 2017 Ethan Van Sciver cannot conceive of, to the media.
Oh my God.
Larger social justice warriors in the area, their connections. And me inviting this poor black man to discuss whether or not I worship Hitler on a live stream was an attack on him and all black people. And before you knew it, this had spun out into an enormously cynical enterprise, an investigation into my personal racism, et cetera, et cetera. There were articles written everywhere.
Yeah, I was going to say, how many articles?
So many. I mean, I was just like, what the fuck? Like, I just wanted to talk to this one individual and say, I'm not a Nazi. And suddenly I'm a KKK guy too. And this is the way and he's laughing about it. And the whole time he's saying, Ethan, as you can see, I control the narrative. And I was like, Jesus.
Whoa,
Christ.
He said that?
Yes.
That's crazy.
So, yeah. And I went, okay, all right. So, right after that is when I just said, fuck it. I am Comicsgate. I'm here to fight this. I'm here to fight this with all my heart. This is evil. This is evil. See, this is the thing. Again, it's not just about, it would be one thing if it was just about, let's turn comic books into propaganda. Mm-hmm. Okay, that would be something you'd be like, comic books, ultimately, again, they're frivolous. If they're going to become propaganda, it's a dying art form anyway. It's probably going to go away. It's not about that. That's not the only thing. They want control. They mm-hmm. want complete and total control of every aspect of pop culture entertainment. And if you defy them, they will ruin your life.
Yeah.
That's a serious thing. It's not just I disagree with you and therefore you probably can't work in comics, or I won't work in comics. I don't want to do this or anything like that. No, they hunt you down like Daryl Ayo did to me. and sought to destroy my life. And sought in various ways. They have allies all over the place. None of them have friends, but they have tons of allies. All of them work together to make an example out of me, to make it so that I would never be able to work without being harassed. Anyone who hired me would endure harassment from them and their cult. They want to make it so that it is dangerous to oppose them. So not just disagreeing with them. Adam, if you try to work in the mainstream and you say, this is bullshit, guys. I don't want to be a part of this social justice thing. I want to just tell my Incredible Hulk story. I want it to be Bruce Banner and not this Asian kid who seems to enjoy being the Hulk. It's fun to be the Hulk. That's interesting. That's an interesting story.
Not much struggle in that story, is there?
No, of course not, because he's Asian. He's got to enjoy everything. It's fun to be the Hulk. I'm the awesome Hulk. Totally awesome Hulk. So I don't want to do that. I want to do the classic Stanley Kirby thing, and Bruce Banner's a white male. So, my character is going to be a white male. They will seek to destroy you because if you succeed, and this is the key thing, if you succeed, others will follow your example and oppose them too. Now, this is where I think, this is where I stand right now.
Yeah.
This is my situation. And people say, well, it's just a frog comic book. Why are they so mad about a frog comic book? Why are they so determined to take my frog comic book and say the pages are wrinkled? You know what I mean? It's not a good story. It's right, because I opposed them. They tried to destroy me. They tried to destroy me for voting for Trump and then trying to interview Daryl Ayo to prove that I'm not a white supremacist. And yet here I still am. Here I still am.
You did a talent. You did a live stream where you basically outlined Remphamus' experience at Comic-Con in New York. She did a book, right? She had something in an anthology. Remphamus is, for those of you who don't know, it's kind of Ethan's arch nemesis on Twitter. I think might be an okay way to describe her. Like you guys disagree on politics, right? But she wants to be a comic book creator too.
I don't know if she disagrees with me on politics. She used to be a Republican.
Oh my God.
Did you know that? She worked for the Republican Party, and her job was the same thing that she's doing now.
Oh my
She's a
God.
troll. She's a paid troll whose job it is to humiliate and destroy whatever her target is,
right?
Okay, on social media, to get them angry, to get them spouting gibberish that's going to destroy their lives. And she's so good at it. So you want to stay away from Remphamus unless you are perfectly convinced that you can humiliate her in public. I can do that. So I do engage her. That's why she has me blocked. All right. So Remphamus, I don't think that she ever meant to be a comic book artist or writer.
It was an opportunity. An opportunity opened up for her, so she took it, right?
It's her way of saying, I can do whatever I want because I'm a social justice warrior. I belong to this club. I don't even fucking care about comic books. And they're going to let me write for Marvel Comics. They're going to let me. I'm hanging out with Joe Quesada. I'm hanging out with these people. Why? Because I piss on you all day. And I, as a social justice warrior, can go where I want to go. I can do my own comics without any experience, practice, without having read a comic book in my entire life, because that's who we are, bitch. And that's entirely why she's doing a comic book. Wow. She doesn't care. She's doing it out of spite. And it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing to watch this happen. So we're doing it out of love. They're doing it out of spite. And it's a fight. It's an incredible fight. I'm telling you, if you declare yourself Comicsgate, if you're a part of this, I can promise you we'll have your back. This community, this fandom will support you. You're going to do really, really well, but you're going to endure some very, very weird abuse on Twitter and on social media. And I hope you have the backbone for it.
Yeah, who are the players in Comicsgate now? Like who are the disaffected Comicsgaters? And I mean, I started making videos, and that's one of the reasons why I ended up contacting you, because I'm curious, what Comicsgate stands for. I noticed there's some infighting, but I am really kind of a peacemaker. Like I'm trying to show people, like, you don't really know how deep this social justice thing is. Like if you can't, you need to know what you're fighting against before you like take out the knives and start infighting. So
Well,
I feel like if people knew, like right now, Comicsgate is kind of this amorphous thing. But if people knew the values behind it, then they could say, well, I stand for those values. And then you could say, well, if you stand for those values, then you're Comicsgate. Like those are the
here's what
values of
Comicsgate
Comicsgate.
is. Comicsgate is 5 different groups of people.
Mm-hmm.
First group is anti-Comicsgate. That's
Mm-hmm.
the biggest group of people. Okay, that's basically the social justice warriors who currently, inhabit the mainstream comic book industry, and who have everybody else in line. Either you
Right.
agree with them and are working along with them, or you keep your mouth closed. That's anti-Comicsgate.
But they are against anybody that's against their philosophy. They have a
That's
guiding
100%.
philosophy that is this marginalized people above else. Like we need to structure society to care for the least among us. That's their philosophy. Anybody that comes close to standing in the way of that philosophy is an alt-right Nazi, must be eliminated from society. Give them their papers and send them packing. Correct?
You will pay for it.
Yes,
That's right.
yes.
If you oppose them, you will pay for it.
Submit or die.
Right.
Yes.
So it's good to have. It's good to be in a situation where you're self-employed, you have nothing to lose, or you're anonymous.
Yes.
You're going to oppose them. So that's group 1. Group 2, I think we would call them OG Comicsgate. That's what they call themselves. They are the early voices of Comicsgate who rose up on YouTube and on the blogs to actually point out. They're the ones who first noticed the problem because they're voracious comic book readers and fans. And they love comics, and they started to say, wait, what is this? What's going on here? Why is, what is this? Ask me about my feminist agenda t-shirt on this Mockingbird cover. What is going on here? And these are the guys who made videos and got the word out and were viciously opposed by editors, by professionals, and by social justice warrior, advocates on Twitter. They were called Nazis. Their lives were, turned upside down for the most part, but most of them are anonymous. They all have kind of screen names.
Mm-hmm.
It's like Englantine, I Love Comics, Unranked Chevron, Captain Cummings, Diversity in Comics, before we found out what his name was when he was doxxed.
Mm-hmm.
All of these people are OG Comicsgate, and they still exist. And they really believe, OG Comicsgate really believes that Comicsgate is only a fan or a customer movement. There's no room for professionals. So that's their point of view.
So they don't want people coming from the industry and crowdfunding their own books. They want to keep it indie.
Right. Their concerns. No, they don't want to keep it indie. I think that their concerns are we want to fight Marvel and DC and get them to change and bring back our characters.
So they're looking for institutional change.
Yeah.
So this helps if you have a toe in the industry still. It does, because I don't see how you can make industry-wide change unless you change the industry from within. That's how the social justice advocates have taken over.
That's right. That's how I feel too, and that's how Doug Ernst felt. That's how Zach felt. From Diversity in Comics, and that's why there's the next group, which would be my group, which we would just call Comicsgate Phase 2 or Mainstream Comicsgate. And I would actually take Mainstream Comicsgate because I think we're the largest group within Comicsgate. And it basically is an allyship of customers and professionals who have decided that the mainstream is no longer listening. They will not listen to us. There's no point in arguing with the mainstream. The next phase is to simply fight them by creating a counter project or a counter product to build up a secondary industry, an alternative industry to the mainstream. And that consists of me, that consists of your boy Zach, John Malin, people like Andrew Huerta, people like Antonio Bryce, Kanan White. I could go down. If I try to list too many people, I'm gonna forget.
And this is why you want to get as many reputable names involved as possible, because this adds authority to your argument. It adds authenticity.
Reputable names is a good thing. I'm more interested in great projects.
Right.
If newbies come along, newbies like Kyle Ritter, who is the colorist on Cyberfrog, and surprise, surprise, is a fantastic artist and released this comic book called Starblades, which is better than literally. You can make arguments about whether Cyberfrog is as good as a Marvel comic or not. I'd say it's fucking way better, but Starblades is undeniably better than anything that Marvel and DC are putting out right now. It is visually absolutely beautiful. It's exactly what they want to do, and just don't seem to be capable of doing anymore. So we say, well, we've got Kyle Ritter with us, and I think the mainstream of comics, the comic industry, would say, so what? But fans look at that comic book and say, that's a better product. That's a product I want to support. And so somebody like Kyle Ritter, who, by the way, is such a good guy. He's also deaf mute, and he just lives in his world of coloring and drawing and everything.
Wow.
He's fantastic. We'd rather have him. We'd rather have an energized, excited, hungry Kyle Ritter producing work of this magnitude than a tired out, I don't know, social justice warrior creator from the mainstream. We'd much rather have that.
Right.
So we're mainstream. I think we're mainstream Comicsgate. So group number 4, I think, would be right wing Comicsgate. You're looking at John Delarose. You're looking at Vox Day. You're looking at their crew, the ones that call mainstream Comicsgate cucks.
Okay.
I mean, that's, that would be them. They'd be like, you guys are cucks. You could get in there. You could be right wing. These people are, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
They've got their attitude, their anger that they're going to express with their far right wing politics. So that's the 4th group. And the 5th group is the religious wing of Comicsgate, the evangelical wing that recently left the mainstream of Comicsgate. And that's Mike S. Miller, Doug TenNapel. That would be Edwin Boyette, who isn't really a creator, and basically guys that sort of orbit them. I would say Elliot Fernandez belongs to the religious evangelical wing of Comicsgate. And those guys decided that their purpose in creating comics outside of the mainstream could never be. They could never not, profess their love for Jesus Christ in their comics and on their live streams and all of this stuff, and make that a big foundational part of their business. So it doesn't really work with mainstream Comicsgate, because we've got atheists, we've got Jewish people, we've got Muslims, we've got gays, we've got all kinds of people who are reading our books, and they specifically want to tell them about Jesus. So that's cool. You guys can do that. They still consider themselves Comicsgate, but I think the rules of mainstream Comicsgate make them feel excluded.
Right. Because they want to write political books. So it sounds like you have 5 different factions, and you have 2 of those 5 who actually want to appropriate the apparatus of making comics just for a different type of propaganda. They basically want to make their own political messaging in books, which, I'm not, the word propaganda sounds bad, but I mean, if they want to tell that message, my thing is, like, if you're going to tell a compelling story has to come first. Like, people just don't want to be preached to. They don't. The people who, like, these books always inevitably end up preaching to the choir, because the kind of person that buys, Christian rock or a Christian comic book, they're already a Christian. Like, you don't have your atheist going out and buying a Christian comic book and saying.
I used to do that. I used to accidentally buy like Christian rock, and I'd be like, I listen to the lyrics, and I'd be like, hold me when when I'm down, blah blah blah, and I'd be like, wow, this is a really sexy love song. Oh shit, they're talking about Jesus. And I'd be like furious. It's like, why couldn't you just tell me? Like, you have to disguise your message this way. I really resent that.
See?
I really resent it. It's like, just say this is Christian rock, and let me know that in advance. But they try to kind of disguise it. And I think the same thing happens in comics.
Well, that's exactly what the social justice warriors are doing. They're trying to disguise it. They're like, Star Wars hasn't changed. What are you talking about? Star Wars has always been about female empowerment.
Gaslighting, just endless gaslighting. I mean, it's incredible.
It's funny because the original 70s Star Wars, I mean, Princess Leia was definitely a female empowerment character, but it wasn't like shoved in your face.
Well, I mean, she could have been shoved in my face, and that would have been okay. There were only 3 women in the original Star Wars trilogy, 3 female characters, and one of them just ended up crispy critter, by a stormtrooper in the first few minutes of the movie. But I mean, there are only 3, and so you can say there need to be more women in Star Wars, and I could be like, I don't see why, but okay, you know what I mean? Like, this is the same dumb argument. It's like, we need more women in STEM, in the STEM industry, and it's like, why? For what reason? How is that going to improve any of this? It's like, just because it's going to kind of make us feel better to know that women are there. Okay, that's fine. Is there a problem right now? No. But we want more women to feel like they can do it. Okay, that's great. Star Wars is the same way. Last Jedi was wall to wall bizarre looking women. I watched that movie and it's like it's absurd. They're showing the what would be the rebel, I guess the resistance base at one point, and they're all the soldiers moving around in the background. They're all women. They're all women punching buttons on the screens. All of them. I mean, so the number of women should be like in a Star Wars movie, I guess, on the screen at any given time should be like more than 0 and less than a billion, I would say, somewhere in there. The screen was only women at that point, which I thought was absolutely. You're making a statement at that point.
Oh, totally.
You're saying something. You're saying something to the audience. You're giving them the finger. You're giving Star Wars fans the finger. Look what we can do.
The Laura Dern character, I find fascinating. She's like a I just want to see the scene where they come in to get their orders and she's actually having her hair done. Like her hair is all like she's back in the chair. She's got the tin foil on her hair. They're doing the highlights perfectly, and she's
wearing a prom gown. I don't understand. Like, what if you get in this shit? What if you actually have to fight?
I know. Do they have any concept? Do they have any concept of military culture here? Like, you are going to war.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Mon Mothma wore what looked like a wedding gown, I guess. I don't know. I mean, there's I guess there's Star Wars culture that reinforces itself. But yeah, just strange characters, just people. You get the sense that Laura Dern thought her role was silly, didn't really want to be there, but wanted to make a point about being there. I'm in Star Wars. I'm a woman in Star Wars in control. But this is all really stupid. Your space story is stupid, which is why I mouth pew pew when they film me in close up firing my blaster. It is, her contempt, for the role is pretty clear. So you're seeing that around. That just goes back more to Renfamous, being in comics. These people who are doing comics just because they can, in order to just say, I have the power to do this because of what I believe and the club that I'm in, that you are not in, and we are going to keep you out of.
Yeah. We've been talking for over an hour now. So have we pretty much touched on anything? Is there anything that I've missed as far as Comicsgate goes?
You tell me. I mean, if you have any more questions, you wanted to talk gossip about some of these people.
Well, I don't know. I am kind of like I would like to see people come together on this, and I feel like there are players that want to burn down Comicsgate that I'm like, I don't understand here. Like, you're in a gunfight and you're saying throw away all the weapons. It's like the social justice side is not going to stop. Like, this stuff is everywhere. This stuff is like, I'm not very optimistic on institutional change. And I honestly think we need institutional change because literally we have the social justice stuff infecting the news. Like, you can't, the news is no longer about discerning truth about reality, but it's about creating these oppression narratives for public consumption. That's not a healthy society to live in. So I'm a little nervous about it. So my heart is with Comicsgate, just in the fact that if you could fight back against what's going on in entertainment and return entertainment to the entertainment industry instead of the social justice propaganda industry, like, I'm 100% behind that. But the infighting, I mean, you give me your perspective on the infighting. Is the infighting gonna do Comicsgate in, or?
No, it can never do Comicsgate in, because Comicsgate's an idea. But I mean, it could possibly convince other people not to want to participate, not to want to give it a shot, because people do want to be where things look fun, where they look safe, and people fighting all the time isn't great. But I don't really know how to counter that. I think there's room in Comicsgate, as I just spelled out for you. There's anti-Comicsgate and these 4 other groups that essentially should be able to contain everybody and their point of view. But I think people kind of see me and see my YouTube show as an attempt to be all of Comicsgate, to represent all of Comicsgate, which is nothing that I ever wanted to do. I wanted to do my book. I personally wanted to fight SJWs in comics. I didn't take this on to represent Comicsgate. Comicsgate represents me. I mean, that's what I feel. I don't feel like I've ever been the leader of Comicsgate. I don't think that I need to tell other people what to do. But I do have ideas about from being in the comic book industry for 26 years. I know how it works. I know how these people operate, and I know where they're weak, and I know where they're afraid. I feel like I know how to make real change, to force change from them. And the only way to do that is to offer an alternative business model that scares the piss out of them. Now, why Comicsgate works the way that I'm doing it is because most of these people, the comic book industry relies on, well, it's predatory, it's exploitative. It relies on people who are in love with Batman and Spider-Man and Wonder Woman and Superman. It relies on convincing them that they should spend their lives drawing these properties that belong to enormous corporations for a fraction of the wealth that is gained from them. And when you die, and when you can no longer draw, when you go blind and you get arthritis and you can no longer do it, I hope you saved your money. Most of these people are not saving their money. They're not making enough money in the comic book industry to do so. They basically wasted their life away making periodicals that 99.9% of the time are forgettable. Nobody's going to care about. Now, once Comicsgate shows an alternative model, that crowdfunding, that using social media, that creating your own IPs, that interacting directly with the marketplace, as we do, leads to a much brighter personal future. It's going to lead to a much better future for just me personally, because of Cyberfrog's success, what I'm doing on YouTube. I've already made $1 million, more than that in a year. That would have taken me forever to do on Green Lantern, forever. I've done it already. I'm going to try to do it again with Cyberfrog #2. Once more people see this, Marvel Comics and DC Comics are going to lose their slave labor. They're going to lose these people who they're depending on, these super talented people. They're going to lose their confidence, and these people are going to realize that, hey, I've got ideas of my own, and I can go out there and I can sell my ideas directly to my fan base that I've earned by working in the trenches for DC and Marvel Comics for so many years. And I'm going to get rich, and I'm going to own my own things, and I'm going to be able to pass this stuff down to my kids. It's a real legacy. That is one of the reasons why the industry, okay, the mainstream industry, Marvel and DC, are joining with social justice warriors to crush Comicsgate. It's in their best interests. They need to stop this example of super successful self-marketing, social media plus crowdfunding as a viable and, in fact, much superior model for individual creators than they can offer. They need to crush that. And so when you see Joe Quesada interacting with social justice warrior bullies on Twitter, encouraging them, telling them that they should continue doing so, it's because they're needed. Those social justice warriors are needed to stop us and to end this experiment. So this is what I want to do. This is where I am. I want to succeed. I want anybody who comes along and wants to be on my show to also have access to my audience, to also have a chance to raise a lot of money on their comic book, and to also set an example. That personally benefits me and my goal to show the mainstream comic book industry that they're in real trouble right now. Real trouble just because of the way things are changing in the world and society. Brick and mortar comic shops are closing down. People do not want to drive to comic shops anymore. People want to live in a push button and deliver culture, instantaneous gratification, and we have to work within Comicsgate to make that a possibility while that old model dies down. So these are my ideas. A lot of people agree with them, and that's why I think the infighting happens as more people vie and fight to be on my platform. And I don't.
Well, I understand you have a valuable resource that people want to take advantage of. So I understand if you're saying much of the infighting comes from people that are potentially jealous of your success, that makes perfect sense to me. That's completely logical. Obviously,
Sometimes,
yeah,
sometimes,
that it's normal to be. Hopefully, people can channel that jealousy into productivity that will serve them in the long run. So it's good to get a good kick to get your own projects off the ground. I'm curious because you do. I mean, you've got the gift of the gab. You're obviously hilarious. You're a likable guy. Like, it seems like if you spent time marketing, like, you could almost be a publisher. Like, you could almost be putting out a book a month if you were just publishing other creators under the all caps label and acting kind of as a producer marketing end. And then, I mean, then the big guys, like, how can they not take notice if Ethan Van Sciver is trying to become like the Netflix of comic books?
We'll see where things go. I'm kind of just feeling around in the dark in a lot of ways, with what the possibilities are, but starting up my own publishing, that's what all caps comics is. Inviting more people to join me seems like a good idea.
If you started your own comic book label, I predict you would have sign me up. I'm all caps comics. Let's make
cool.
Let's make D Smashers your second book or your first official book that you're not the artist on. So, I mean,
I don't know.
do?
I have to say, I don't know if I want to be. I don't know if I want to publish too many other people at this point, because I would be. I don't. Am I a boss? Is that what I want to be? Do I want to be boss of people? I don't know.
Caesar,
and yet I would have to be.
Caesar, what are you talking about?
Yeah, I love that. Caesar's funny. It's like the last thing I am,
Are you telling me Caesar's not in charge? It sounds like
right.
I thought you were in this because you were an egomaniac, Ethan, and like you wanted all this control. Now I'm offering it to you. And you're saying
I want zero control. I don't want control over anybody. I really don't. I think Caesar's fun. I think that's
totally. That's internet
kind of
culture.
Mock respect.
Yeah, totally.
I enjoy it. I don't know. I will start. Obviously, all caps comics. We're going to see how it goes. We've had one really big success with Cyberfrog. I'm doing these variant covers on Vampirella that are raising enormous amounts of money. That's a pretty cool thing, but that's not something I want to do forever. I'm negotiating right now for the rights to publish a rather big comic book property under all caps comics, just as an experiment. People will find out about that soon. I'm talking about how, getting more of my ideas out there and hiring people to do them. But again, I'd be no better than anyone else. I'd be paying people. I'd be making them into wage slaves. It would be the exact. People are like, why don't you hire someone else to do Rainbow the Brute for you, which is my other big idea that I want to do. I've kind of pushed it to the side to do Cyberfrog 2 because I just feel like there's so much momentum there. And I'm like, then I would be no better than Marvel Comics and DC. And what I'm saying is, I don't want people to be wage slaves. I don't want people to invest their lives in my IPs. I mean, I guess that it's almost inevitable. But I hope if that happens, it's just a stepping stone for people into doing their own things. I've got 6 or 7 ideas. I want them out there. Do I hire other people to draw them, or do I hire people to bring their ideas over to me? And then am I profiting off of somebody else's work? I don't want to. You bring your book over here and I'm like, well, 10% of that's mine. I don't want that. It just feels awful.
It's the question of, I understand what you're pushing up against. You're like, how fair is fair? But if I'm going to crowdfund my own book and I'm going to get 100% of, X, and you're going to bring 10X to the table, I would much rather give 10% to somebody that's going to make my crowdfunding campaign 10 times more successful. That is capitalism, is it not, Ethan?
But Adam, that's what I'm doing for free on my show.
I know you are. And
I think we might be stumbling on the problem here.
Yeah. It's not a sustainable model because you're not incentivized to do it over time. But if you are making a percentage and you are helping good books get out there and you're increasing your influence in the industry, which is another problem that we always, got a side eye at, then that is fundamentally good for everyone. I can't think of a more win-win-win situation.
Yeah, like, you know what? Honestly, like, most of these problems would go away. The jealousy problems would go away. The infighting might go away if I actually charged people to be on my show.
Yeah.
If I became a paid shill, and you knew that the person who was on my show, who I was supporting right now and telling you that you should buy, gave me $100 to be on my show, there would be less infighting, because you would have a choice. You would say, if I want to be on Ethan's show, I got to give him $100. This guy gave him $100, so fair's fair. He's on the show. I think a lot of that would go away, and yet I can't do that. I just can't do it. I can't do it. I can't get myself to take anyone's money. I'm doing so well. I take enough.
Oh my
People
God!
give
It's
me
so funny.
much.
It's so funny that the way the left characterizes you, you sound like a socialist here.
I'm not a socialist. I'm a Christian. I can't. I can't do that. It's different. I want to give people because I want to give to people and help people succeed because they deserve it, because their work is worthy of it. If your work is not very good, I'm not going to put you on my show.
Yeah.
I'm not a socialist.
Yes.
It's a meritocracy that I am the judge of. And it's also a matter of how much free time do I have to expend helping other people versus with, being with my family. So it's a dicey kind of, where does Ethan stand? Why am I not on his show? Is my book terrible, or is he just ignoring me for another reason? These problems arise all the time.
Yeah.
But I can't take money from people. And also my audience needs to know that when I'm promoting your book, Adam, when you're on my show and I'm telling people I think your book's great and people should back it.
The all caps book?
No, that would be even worse. Like, it's like, yeah, he's under, of course you should back it. He's under my label. But no, because I think it's good,
right.
Because I think people should support it.
I'm mature enough to know that I wouldn't ask you to back a book that you didn't believe in. I know people will do that, but honestly,
I've done it once or twice. It feels terrible. I mean,
really?
I'm a hypocrite. And it's like, I make mistakes all the time, and there are things people can go, yeah, but what about the time you did this? It's like, yeah, that's right. And I learned from it. It's like, there have been times when I've had books on and I've been supporting books, telling people to buy them. And I'm looking at them and I'm going, I wouldn't do this myself. Like, I wouldn't support this. And it is, what it feels like? It feels like dragging an anchor uphill. People just look at it and go, I'm not going to support that. I'm not going to back that. And they don't.
Yes.
And then in the meantime, you're watching other people who are on the show. Let's say I have 8 people on the show, and 6 of them, you're watching their account, their numbers grow, and there are 2 that are just not so great, and they're just sitting there.
Oh my God, it's so bad.
It's so bad. It's just like, okay, let's refresh and see. Okay, well, we're gonna keep pushing this. But I know why it's happening. It's like, it's happening.
Can you give them? Do you give them insight?
Person.
Do you give them insight though? Do you tell them like this is why your book is not succeeding, or
sometimes?
Yeah, it's tough.
But it's
tough.
A practical thing. It's usually like I'll say something like, I told Andrew Huerta, who does a book called Sovereign. I said, I'll tell you something. One of the reasons why your book isn't going as quickly as it could, because your book is good, is because the image that comes up every single time, we go to your Indiegogo page, it says Sovereign by Andrew Huerta, and then there's a little bar of an image, and it sucks. Like it's
okay,
this
good.
Little tiny headshot within a orange. Nobody knows what it is. It's not exciting, and people make snap judgments. So I tell you, Andrew Huerta, that if you just change that image from that to this, you're going to see results. And he did.
Yeah, good.
And so that's the kind of thing. But when it comes to telling other people stuff, giving them advice about what books to create, how to do it, how to write, how to draw, no, I don't take the time to do that. I wouldn't. People are creative. These creative people need to do what they want to do.
Yeah.
If anybody asked me for advice, I suppose I would give it to them, but I'm certainly not going to impose it on them.
Yeah, it's hard when you don't know them too, because you really don't know how they're going to react. And some people they cannot take criticism at all. So
it's a good way to make another enemy.
Yeah, exactly. Someone else who, Caesar hates me. So do you? Maybe we should mention, because I know you're getting a lot of heat on the war campaign stuff, and I mean, I looked into those guys, and it's so funny. People always tell you like this, all the awful, terrible stuff, and then I always look in. I'm like, I'm expecting, where's the spicy stuff? I want to see good stuff, and I'm looking. I'm like, who are you, the church lady? Like, what exactly did they do wrong here?
Yeah. Well, I think what War Campaign does,
Uh-huh.
we've already discussed Comicsgate, the ins and outs of
Right.
Comicsgate. There are a lot of people who oddly betray their friends in Comicsgate. They
Right.
do things, they say things that the people don't like. That they kind of we've seen it happen over and over again with certain individuals who actually get involved in what's known on the internet as gay
Yeah,
ops.
I did
Uh,
know what that was. I'm still not sure what that is.
Let me explain. I didn't know what it was either. I've learned an awful lot. They will seek out damaging personal information in private in order to, and they'll do that, and it'll be mixed with a bunch of kind of phony baloney, sort of fake scandals, things like that, in order to bring someone down.
Okay.
Which is what they've been doing this to me forever. They've floated out rumors that I'm a gay prostitute, and I like stuff like this, and they try to get people to believe weird stuff. I went to the Breitweisers and to in Arkansas to have meetings about maybe creating a publishing venture, and they said he's down there having a threesome with the Breitweisers, like just weird shit. And then they'll just kind of spread these rumors and try to get them around, and eventually it's supposed to bring you down. So literally gay ops.
So they're basically trying to paint a picture like you're in some gay liaison. That's where
sure.
That's where the term comes from. Yeah, I want the dirty stuff.
Right. They'll just invent these things. So another thing is there's a whole group of people who are currently trying to set up this belief system, this narrative that in order to get on my show, you have to go on War Campaign, and they beat you up, and I guess they do whatever it is that they do, and then once they go, he's okay, Caesar, then this person's on my show. It's like, and
oh
then
my
so
goodness.
War Campaign suppresses the indie comics movement, and ultimately all of this is about one thing: getting on my YouTube show, which is not Comicsgate. It's all caps comics. It's my YouTube show.
Yeah.
So anyway, this is what we would call gay ops. And the idea is to sort of separate your fans from you or expose you as some kind of monster or something like that. Now, these people exist. They do things like this. People who misbehave on the internet. There is a group of fans called War Campaign. And War Campaign began when I did a live stream, and one particular comic skater decided to take that live stream mashup, this group, live stream, in order to expose me as somebody who was gatekeeping Comicsgate. It was a very, very strange thing, but it was seen by mostly everyone who was there as discourteous and a knife in my back, which is how I got the name Caesar. War Campaign arose from that. They took the Caesar thing and became, this is Rome, and we're your War Campaign, and we're going to watch the community to see when more of these gay ops weirdos show up. And if they do, we're going to make fun of them. I was like, okay, do your thing, I guess.
So what is the extent of the making fun? Sorry to interrupt, but because this is where people have the argument. Like, they're not calling people on their personal cell phone. They're not doxing people. They're not doing
that. They make memes.
Yeah, they make funny pictures of people and they show them on their show.
Yeah.
Like, if you've been on YouTube for any length of time, like, there is a meme about you somewhere. There's dozens of them of me. I'm sure there's thousands of them of you.
Yeah. Tons of them of me. I basically what they do is I see them as political satirists within Comicsgate. They're the political cartoonists that it's like they watch over. They don't. You should never. It's like if they were to ever attack fans, I think that would be a problem. I think they mostly will shame the public figures within Comicsgate.
Right. The critics.
So guys like, critics, Doug, Mike S. Miller, Edwin Boyette, people who are on the live streams, who do and say things. And then also Renfamous and the, anti-comic skaters. They'll sit there and they'll pull up I've been on their show a few times, and what they do is they'll go, so what do you think about this, Ethan? What do you think this represents? And they'll pull up a picture of a room, and there will be like me in a wrestling costume. They put my head over it, and there'll be Mike S. Miller as an angry baby being held by Renfamous, who's dressed like the Virgin Mary. And they'll go, what do you think this all means? And you have to go through it, and you go, well, that's me as a wrestler in a hotel room, and it looks like Renfamous is the Virgin Mary, and she's holding the Christ child, Mike S. Miller, who's crying. It's very interesting. They go, yeah, okay, all right, let's look at another one. And that's basically what they do. It's this pseudo solemnity, and it's absurd and it's funny. Yeah, I can see how humorless people would not like it. It gets blown out of proportion. You know, that's work campaign. I think they're funny. I just think they're funny guys, and they all, you know, there's a running joke that they're all gay. You know, they're internet gay, which means they're gay only on the internet, not in real life.
I've heard you use one term that I've only heard on their show.
What's that?
The back hole.
Back No, but see, that came from the internet too. There was a moment where like trans people and LGBTQ activists came forward and said calling it the anus and the vagina is cisgendered, you know what I mean? So it's front hole and back hole. That's what we need to be teaching kids, front hole and back hole. So that became a thing for a little while, and they, of course, back hole kind of took on a life of its own.
So you're just trying to be politically correct, which
100%. I don't know. They, you know, it's their thing, but I think it's funny.
Well, I feel like I could talk to you forever, but I feel like sooner or later we're going to have to wrap this up. So,
well, you said you needed to go at 5. It's 4:56. So
well, I'm on California time, so it's not even 2.
Oh shit!
Like I have plenty of time.
Yeah.
But I mean, we can stop recording. I don't know if have we pretty much covered everything. I mean, we could talk about the Mike S. Miller apology. Like I watched that live stream, and I'm curious because I jumped on a live stream with Mike Miller. I showed up in his chat. I have a channel with like 74,000 subscribers, so I get invited on whenever I show up in somebody's chat. And so I talked to him for a while. He came on my channel a little. I know he's promoting a book, which is fine. You've talked a bit about loyalty, and it's funny because I've studied moral psychology, so I know like a lot of the moral foundations, loyalty is a big one. It's really funny to me because if you look at the statistical data, conservatives score very high on the loyalty foundation. You know who scores very low on the loyalty foundation? Progressives.
It doesn't seem like that. Sometimes it seems like it would be the other way around, the way they stick together.
Well,
how about that?
Well, look at the data. So it's like when I see all these backstabbings, I think, well, that's very progressive of you. I don't know.
Yeah. I don't understand disloyalty. I talk about this all the time. You know, I really wish Comicsgate could adhere as a group. I wish we could all stick together, and we don't have to like each other, all of us, but I wish we all work towards the same goals, because those goals are good for everyone. And if we're all on the same kind of live streams, if we're all on the same kind of team together, and we're all promoting each other's comics, you're going to see a lot of people making a lot of money and being very successful. And with money comes personal freedom.
Yeah.
It's, you know, that's what this is all about. It really is all about the freedom to not be afraid of social justice warriors, to do whatever you want to do. So you know, loyalty is something that is demanded of you when you work for DC Comics. You know, a good way to get blacklisted from DC Comics is to speak out against DC Comics. They will shun you.
Yeah.
Marvel, I think, is the same way. And it would be great if it were that way within Comicsgate as well.
There's a pretty clear distinction between like writers and critics, or filmmakers and critics. That line exists in a lot of industries. It's like the critics are the ones that are supposed to tear you apart, not the other creators. Like we're all supposed to support each other's books. So, and I feel like even when you're talking about you promoting other people's books that you think are subpar, I think you're falling on the side of that creator's line. Like I really need to. Like we should stand together. So what would be some example of disloyalty, perhaps? I noticed in the live stream you mentioned that Mike S. Miller had made videos that you thought were disparaging of you.
See, Mike's different because Mike is somebody who I would have considered to be a friend.
Okay.
You know, in general, you know, loyalty between me and people that I don't know very well just means stand up for Comicsgate.
Right.
And I tell these guys, you know, when I bring you into my fold and I put you in one of these rooms and say, I'm going to promote your books because I think they're good. I tell them what it means to be loyal is to always stand by your brothers, promote their comics, give as much as you take, and stand up for Comicsgate. Stand up for it. You're going to take a beating for it. Be prepared to do that. And I've got guys like Von Klaus out there from Monster MD. These guys are out there promoting Comicsgate, retweeting people's comics, retweeting their Indiegogo campaigns. That's what I mean. That's what we should be doing. I find personal disloyalty to be a real problem. Mike was different. Mike, this wasn't about business. Mike was somebody who I was concerned about his family, and he puts his family on live streams all the time. So we all know his kids. We know what his concerns are, because his live streams aren't about Star Wars. They're about his personal life and his religious views. So I was concerned for him. I know that he had some trouble. He let everybody know what his financial situation was upon joining Comicsgate. And friendship gets you a lot of latitude. Friendship buys you a lot of latitude. Mike did some stuff early on that really I rubbed me the wrong way. He decided to sit down and create a piece of artwork called Comicsgate Alliance, in which he drew his characters with all of ours, including mine, Cyberfrog, Salamandroid, Rainbow the Brute.
Mm-hmm.
And we all went, why? Okay. Now, this was the source of a lot of problems that Mike was creating, because Mike was defining who was Comicsgate and who wasn't by doing that poster. So Mike was, immediately Tim Lim goes, how come Thump the bunny isn't on there? How come this character isn't on there? How come that? Well, early on, because of that piece of artwork, we had we had a bunch of other guys kind of depart from Comicsgate because they felt like, hey, Comicsgate is now just Ethan's friends. Mike S. Miller is doing this poster that's defining what characters are Comicsgate, and my character isn't on it. And I guess that's because Mike and Ethan decide who is Comicsgate. That was a big problem. I can't even tell you how big of a problem that was for fledgling Comicsgate.
Was it out of ignorance though, or was it out of malice? Because I mean, that
it wasn't out of malice.
Yeah.
It was just out of just clumsiness.
Yes. Okay.
And that was the thing. I mean, we should never define what the margins are of this thing. I mean, if you feel like you're Comicsgate, you're Comicsgate. If this was All Caps Comics Alliance and you just want to put in all of the All Caps Comics characters, that'd be one thing. But you're talking about Comicsgate. So, I mean, you've got all these other guys who consider themselves to be Comicsgate, who aren't necessarily my personal friends or don't know Mike Miller, who came in off the streets, by the way, and he brought him in at a point when people were already suspicious of professionals coming in and taking over the movement. And he's defining which comic book characters from the indie movement are legit and which ones aren't. And that was a gigantic, enormous PR disaster that took a while. I think the effects of that are still being felt within Comicsgate. And then, without asking me, he published it as a variant cover for Lone Star.
Whoa! Oh, interesting.
And said this is the first new appearance of Cyberfrog Salamandroid and the first appearance of Rainbow the Brute.
Wow!
And you kind of go, I know you think you're being funny, but it's like, that's not funny. You didn't ask my permission to do that. Well, you let me do it as a poster. That's different. I didn't give you permission to make it a comic book. And so these kinds of issues would continually pop up around Mike.
Interesting.
Continually pop up where it's like, you're taking advantage of my friendship with you. He would sit there and he would call me up and say, why haven't you, the Meg isn't doing very well. The Meg campaign isn't doing very well. It's because you're not promoting it as much as you should be. And I'd be like, things like that. So a lot of things kind of bubbled up and boiled over into this thing where, Ethan decides who's successful, who isn't successful. Ethan's friends determine who's Comicsgate, who isn't Comicsgate. It's all about Ethan and his friends. And I think it really started out at that point. So recently, I think because of Mike doing a lot of things that just caused PR problems. For Comicsgate, he took a Mike Wieringo pencil sketch and finished it as Lone Star, and then he copied Mike Wieringo's autograph onto the piece and then said, this is one of Mike Wieringo's last pieces of artwork. Outraged the comic book community, outraged the mainstream comic book community who knew Michael Ringo. Michael Ringo was deceased. He had no way of, he didn't get permission for this to be a Lone Star cover. It was a Spider-Man piece that Mike turned into a Lone Star cover. That required Mike's friends, us, to stand up for Mike and take pies to the face. I mean, really, like, you know, Mike was wrong, and we knew it, and we had to just be like, you know what? He's Mike. So Mike responds to that by burning the original piece of artwork, ostensibly on a bonfire in his backyard publicly, which enraged Michael Ringo's brother, surviving brother, who asked that Mike not publish the piece. And then Mike shows up and says, it was just a joke. That was a photocopy. Here's the original. I fooled you. And then he sold the piece of original art for $1,700 on one of his auction live streams. Adam, do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, as an artist,
Okay.
I mean, there's certain lines. Like,
it was one hit after the next, and then the thing that really broke up the religious, the evangelical side from Comicsgate was Mike, just out of nowhere, on the first day of, I guess, June, tweeted out, "Pride is a sin," hashtag Pride Month. And I didn't notice it. A bunch of comic skaters 5 days later came to me in private and said the SJWs are passing this around.
yeah,
They're passing this around to show that Comicsgate hates gays. And I went out and I just said, this doesn't represent Comicsgate. This is Mike's point of view. Gays are welcome in Comicsgate. We love the gays. Please buy our books.
right.
And Mike and I had a falling out after that because Doug TenNapel reached out to Mike and said, hey, this guy's trying to suppress Christianity. He doesn't prove he's anti-Christian. You should be allowed to go out there and say that Pride Month is a sin if you want to, because it is. It's Christianity. And Doug got into a lot of people's ears and started calling Comicsgate anti-Christian. And that, again, it was just one mop about it. And then Mike's up there. Mike, this became such a big problem with Mike just saying that Comicsgate was anti-Christian. I said, Mike, I think we need to have a talk in private. And he agreed. So we went into this like private room, and Mike is sitting there like this in his chair, and he goes, "You're in quite a pickle, aren't you, Ethan?"
Oh my God.
And I was just like, Mike, you can't be telling people that Comicsgate is anti-Christian.
Right.
You cannot be stoking those kind of fires. And he's like, you know.
Well,
so,
you represent his book. I saw a video. Adam Post, who's another, I guess, comic skater, made a video about that. Made a perfectly logical argument about how, you know, when you promote somebody, you're putting your brand on the line too. Like, your brands are all of a sudden like together. So you have to be conscious of that. It's not to just disregard that. I mean, here's the
tricky thing about it. Yeah, it's like if you are Comicsgate, what you do represents, it affects other comic skaters. So you don't want to do things like that because everybody ends up having to answer for you.
Yes.
When you burn Michael Ringo's original art, I guess, on a live stream, we all have to answer for you. You're acting on behalf of Comicsgate. And whether or not you can come out and say, I am no longer Comicsgate, which is what Doug TenNapel did, which is what Mike did. It doesn't matter what you say. It matters what the mainstream comic book establishment says. And they still call you Comicsgate. They don't make fine distinctions.
Yes.
These people are not interested in figuring out how you personally feel in your heart.
They want Vox Day to be Comicsgate still. Like
they call him Comicsgate. And
exactly.
Again, he kind of is, because he says he is, and so he kind of is. He's not by my definition.
Yeah.
He doesn't belong in what I would consider mainstream Comicsgate that I represent. But yeah, I mean, he's part of the phenomenon. He's part of the movement. And so, you know, that's something that you should be conscious of. And you don't want to have your brothers and sisters answer for you all the time. You don't want to have to do that. I mean, again, what you do and your words and your actions affect everyone around you. And these people are, your brothers and sisters are trying to, within Comicsgate, are trying to sell comics and feed their families. Yeah. We're not in the business of making, you know, religious arguments about whether or not gays are going to hell. I don't see saying you're hellbound as any different from saying you're a Nazi. I don't think that's I don't think there's much of a distinction there to be made when it comes to selling comics.
Yeah.
So this one incident, Pride Month, hashtag Pride Month, Pride is a sin, was a pivotal moment. It was a watershed moment where a big portion of Christians left Comicsgate. And when we talk about gay ops, when we talk about things like that, that's what that was. That's what that was. That was an opportunity for people, I think, who see me as the leader of Comicsgate and don't want me to be. Saw that as a nice way to kind of drive a wedge in there and pull some of the fans away from me by making them feel like they weren't welcome and they were victims of something, and Comicsgate didn't represent their interests. So that the reverberations of that led to Mike's apology, which was, a loaded one. Let's put it that way. So, I when it comes to Mike, at this point, at long last, I'm like, please go your way. Please go your way. You've got to go your own way.
So you think he's just more of a liability than anything. But your ultimate goal is, like you said, the same thing. I watched a stream with you and Doug on Nick Rekieta's channel, and your agreement with him was very like very obvious. You don't talk disparagingly about Comicsgate, and I won't mention you. I don't know who. Obviously, that agreement is not still enforced.
Doug reached out to me in private, and he said, Doug let me know. He said, I'm no longer going to be using the hashtag Comicsgate. I said, why? Everyone loves you here. Like, why would you do that? You just made $200,000 on Bigfoot Bill. And Doug basically said to me, look, I'm going to put out this hardcover version. I'm spending every penny that I made on Bigfoot Bill, because what I'm trying to do is I'm in negotiations with the current rights holder of Earthworm Jim.
Okay.
I would like the graphic novel rights of Earthworm Jim. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show how good my graphic novels can look. So I'm going to spend every penny on this. It's going to be beautiful. Right. He wants the graphic novel rights for Earthworm Jim.
Right.
So he
which is a smart move. Really smart move.
Diabolical. Yes. So he said, I'm going to trade you my video game royalties for those rights, in perpetuity.
Really? And oh my God. That's huge.
Was the whole thing. Yeah. So he gave up his video game royalties. Now he can do these graphic novels. And his feeling was, he told me, I don't want any scandal. I don't want anything controversial around me, which is odd, because if you look up Doug TeNapel courts controversy like a mofo.
Yeah.
He calls transgendered people, he dead names them. And he says, I'm sorry, I don't recognize any. Like Doug, he is controversy. I'm talking to him about this. And I said, okay, well, fair enough. I was like, I would just ask you to please not denigrate Comicsgate. Whatever you do, you go your own way. We'll only say nice things about you. You please only say nice things about us. Because I was like, something's up here. This is fishy. And the first thing he did when Mike said that was to call us anti-Christian. Comicsgate is an anti-Christian movement. The Romans always killed Christians, and so did Caesar. Tweeting stuff like this out.
Oh my God. Is he tagging you on these tweets?
No, no, but everybody knows what he's talking about.
You're blocked. You're not supposed to see these tweets.
Right. So, and so that on top of another thing, like I'm looking at this and going, okay, now this is fucked up. But then he goes to San Diego Comic-Con and he sits on a panel. And this is what everybody talks about. He sits on a panel and he's talking about his crowdfunding success on Bigfoot Bill and Earthworm Jim. And he thanks everybody in the world except for me. I mean, he's just like, Brian Polito over there, I want to thank you for all the influence that you had. And, going through the room and just thanking everyone. Never mentions my name. And like, I honestly think, it's like now would have been the time to say, and Ethan Van Sciver, I reached out to him and he's the one who showed me how to do this and helped me and tirelessly worked to make sure that this was a success. But Doug has convinced himself that this was entirely his fan base that did this for him. It had nothing to do with Comicsgate. So he didn't need to thank me. And I just thought those two things in general, I went, something's a little weird here. It's like we have an issue between the two of us. And spoke to him in private and said, I have this whole conversation with Doug. I talked to him for like 2 hours and we worked it all out. And then the next thing you know, I'm blocked on Twitter. And the reason why I'm blocked is because one of the things that I tweeted out was People were saying Doug was saying, Earthworm Jim cannot be associated with controversy, anything controversial like Comicsgate. Cannot be. And I'm like, you're out there talking about fuck the Rainbow Army, Doug. It's like, that's what you're doing. You're out there making these statements about how you wish Comicsgate would have joined you in fighting the Rainbow Army. What is the Rainbow Army? Now, if it's a matter of not being controversial, Comicsgate does not oppose the Rainbow Army as you define it. Does Earthworm Jim? Comicsgate isn't anti-gay. Is Earthworm Jim? Why are you more at home, with Earthworm Jim than you are here? If it's about not being controversial, I refuse to let anyone say Comicsgate is controversial.
Yeah,
it's ridiculous. It's the opposite of controversial.
Well, and you're trying to fight that label. You're definitely trying to fight that label. Even from when you took the label back from Vox Day, I mean, that's an attempt to try to fight that label of controversy. Like you want to be a mainstream movement.
Yeah.
So it sounds like a lot of it is just, I guess personality conflicts might be the most politically correct way to say it. I mean, I've worked as a producer for television, for internet, for movies and stuff like that. It seems like the thing that always is, the central controversy on any set is always personality conflicts. It's like some, and usually it's not. It's really, sometimes it's not even really what the person did. It's just the way they look. They just, they remind them of some ex-boyfriend or girlfriend or something like that, and you're like,
right.
What can you do? So, but you? I mean, you made a serious attempt on Nick Rekieta's channel to bury the hatchet, and I mean, it would be great to bury the hatchet. And I mean, I did watch your live stream where you watched Mike's apology video, and I completely understand your trepidation now, because if someone is going to make rookie moves over and over and over again and not realize that they're doing it, not even like consult you about, maybe you shouldn't do this, like not really understand that your brands are kind of tied together. Like if I'm promoting your book, I am associated with you whether you like it or not. I mean, inside the industry, inside the comics industry, inside the movie industry, I mean, this is just understood. Like you really don't get in the industry until you make that connection. So maybe it is. Yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I saw you title.
It's unfixable. I really think it's unfixable. It's like people kind of people show you who they are,
but they want to disparage. They're like out. They have basically taken the side of the social justice wars. I hate to interrupt you again, but I mean, they're out there actively trying to disparage Comicsgate. I mean, the fact that Mike made an apology video is, I think, important in the fact that he's at least saying, I'm not going to disparage. Maybe he is making a commitment not to disparage the label anymore.
I don't know. I didn't get that from his apology video.
Yeah.
What I got from his apology video is I felt like Mike decided that it wasn't worth fighting with me anymore. It wasn't going to benefit him. A lot of people think that fighting with me is going to get them some clout, and it does. I mean, if you make a video with my name in it, you're going to get some extra views within Comicsgate. If you're a smaller YouTuber, you're going to get some extra views. You're going to notice that. And fighting with me is going to get you some attention, but ultimately it leads to your doom. I mean, I have a very big, I was told early on, like from another YouTuber with 1 million subscribers, he said, do not pick a fight with bigger YouTubers. Do not ever do it. Because they will not be able to control their fans. And you think that they can control their followers and their subscribers? They cannot. They shouldn't even try to. And I've learned that lesson. It's like, I don't tell people to do anything. People have to do their own thing. And so don't do that. And I would say the same thing. It's like, do not pick a fight. It's not going to end well for you. Unless you're a much bigger channel than mine, it's not going to end well for you. And this is what I think Mike is kind of figuring out. It's like, I do a live stream now and 25 people are in the audience. I just launched a variant cover Indiegogo campaign, and after getting all this press about being kicked off a Kickstarter, I can't break 5 figures. I'm stuck at $6,900.
Yeah,
this is absurd. I mean, when it comes to Comicsgate, somebody like Mike S. Miller should be at $100,000 right now on that.
I agree.
So I think an apology might be due. I guess he's thinking. I don't know. he kind of halfway apologized to me. He said, if you took offense, if I hurt your wife,
Yeah.
These kinds of things. And I go, okay, I accept that apology. But then the apology, you front loaded that apology into a passive aggressive attack on John Malin. I can't, I don't know. I don't know what to do with that. I have to ask you to go your own way and not cause trouble and grief anymore with the people who considered you a friend. And some still do. I mean, I got John Malin going, he's 50% evil, 50% good. I like to, it's like, okay, I'm getting the 50% evil part all the time. I think you're getting the 50% good part. But it's like, at some point, yeah, it's like these personality conflicts, egos within the creative community, they're just unmanageable. I mean, Doug TeNaples' ego versus my ego just cannot be fixed.
Yeah.
It's like at some point, if I needed something from Doug or if Doug needed something from me, that would put us on equal footing. But neither of us need anything from either of us. So he can go his way.
Well,
and I said, yeah, let's not denigrate each other at the end of that Ricada stream. He didn't keep to that.
Yeah.
He didn't keep to that either. He still talks about me. He's still doing these weird reviews. He did a drunken review live stream of Cyberfrog in which he held it up. Were you there when he did this?
I was on one of the streams that he deleted that everyone was saying that he was drunk on. I don't think he was drunk on, but I mean, I asked him if he'd been drinking after the fact, after people were talking about it, and he said he hadn't been drinking. And I take him at his word.
That's even worse.
He had good intentions when he deleted the stream, though, and I actually gave him a hard time about it because I said, listen, he said some things that were disparaging about you that he felt were incorrect, that they were not true. And he wanted to delete the stream because of that. And I was like, yeah, but if you delete the stream, the whole stream, then the drunk charge is going to stick because they're going to say you deleted the stream because you were drunk and you didn't want everyone to know it. Like the thing to do is to cut out the thing that you said that you wish you hadn't have said and just leave the stream up. Done.
Yeah.
But I mean, I've been around YouTube.
Him being drunk makes me, him not being drunk, being sober during that makes me dislike him a lot more. I pushed back on a lot of those streams because I honestly feel like they're completely mischaracterizing the situation, and it bothers me just from a philosophical point of view because they're saying, if you adopt a social justice tactic, then you are a social justice advocate. And I'm like, listen, Doug. Like, I mean, I've looked into this critical theory stuff. Like, the tactics work. It's just it's the end result. It's what you're fighting for.
It's the goal. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's the goal. We want the entertainment industry to put entertainment above social justice ideology. Like, their ultimate goal is to turn comic books into propaganda for social justice. Like, that's exactly what they're doing. So if you're saying that anybody, like when he says, and he's called you an SJW on the Ricada stream for using SJW tactics, I'm like, when you call Ethan an SJW, you're saying that he wants to put propaganda into comics books. And that's not that, like, everyone sees that and they're going, why is he saying that? Because that makes no sense at all. And then when Ethan says you're lying, which you've tweeted out that he's lying, there's reputability behind the lying charge because everyone can see, yeah, Doug is saying something that's completely untrue. So you have to modify your behavior, otherwise you're susceptible to this charge. And I mean, I'm telling him as a friend, I'm trying not to obviously, I think all of us, it could take a look at, could stand some humility. Like anyone who's going to get on the internet and talk has a little bit of an ego. So, I mean, it's good to see yourself as you actually are. I think where a big part of my disagreement with a lot of social justice warriors is like their self-awareness seems to be completely off. And I mean, the stuff that you say about Mike, maybe it's a little bit of a self-awareness thing, but like I said, I'm a conciliatory guy. So I would like if Doug could come around, if Mike could come around, if others could come around. I mean, Malin was on Mike's show.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah. So they obviously, I mean, he's not completely exiled from Comicsgate or anything.
I wouldn't have the power to. He's exiled from my show. You know what I mean? Like I don't. He's exiled from my circle.
Well, that's
I
the
don't want.
power base. Come on.
Well, but that's not my problem. It's like I'm not responsible for Comicsgate at all. I
Yeah.
refuse that responsibility. People have tried to. I think people try to sweet talk me and tempt me into just taking over leadership of Comicsgate and declaring myself leader. Can you imagine? Can you imagine if I kind of said I'm the leader of Comicsgate? What that would actually,
Yeah.
what kind of grief that would
Yes.
send my way?
Yeah.
The anger, the hatred. I would never do it.
Yes.
I don't want that. But what I am is I'm the leader of my YouTube channel. And if people perceive that to be the central hub of Comicsgate, that's their perception. It's just the central hub of what I believe Comicsgate is,
Yeah.
my personal viewpoint, and me marketing comics on behalf of Comicsgate. Somebody like Mike, he could still call himself Comicsgate if he wanted to. These guys can all call themselves Comicsgate, but I can't have Mike constantly causing anguish and strife and hardship, betrayal, bad feelings, bad vibes, arguments, infighting. Like at some point, and I say this a lot, relationships are like mayonnaise. I mean, when they've gone bad, toss them out. What are you going to fix them? It's like they can't be. If the problems within the relationship stem from deep-seated personality issues, I'm 45 years old. I'm not changing. I'm who I am. I'm pretty much set in cement. Mike is the same way, I assume, and most people are. You're silly to think that people can change. So this problem will continue to recur. These problems will continue to recur. Mike kind of taking from the community, not giving back. Mike causing trouble with his trolling on a grand scale. And Mike not really caring that other people are associated with him or connected to him by virtue of his appearing on this show and being around them. What for Lone Star? I mean, I guess Lone Star should live up to its name, Adam. It's got to go out on its own. So I think that's where we, I think that's where we are right now. And Doug TenNapel's the same way. Like, I've seen, once you kind of see Doug TenNapel like that, it's like, from my perspective, Doug TenNapel coming to me and being like, I really need your help. And I've been blacklisted from the industry because of what I've been saying about transgender people. I had this deal with Scholastic and et cetera, et cetera. It fell through. I like what you're doing. Can you help me? And then I'm like, sure. I don't even know you, but sure, I'll help you. I hear what you're saying. I'll help you. And then I devote an entire year of my time to promoting Doug TenNapel, to trying to get him to stop calling the fan base SJWs when they refund him, to teaching him how to do live streams and all this stuff. And at the end of the day, I mean, what happened? What happened out of this? What did I accomplish? What did I really get out of it? Doug TenNapel is not Comicsgate. He's renounced Comicsgate, so he's salted the earth. He can't even. You can't even. I can't even say Doug TenNapel is just another success story from Comicsgate. He won't even let me say that. He's going to say fuck Comicsgate. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no,
So
that's a part that bugs me, because can't you see, like,
we helped you. This
I know.
community gave you everything because they thought you believed in their value system, and you turned on them like a cur dog. So it's like, so not only do I not get to claim your success, in order to inspire other people.
Well, sharing your success. He'll hear claim your success, and he'll be like,
okay, I don't want to do that. But I'm just saying, it's like if this were a Weight Watchers or a Jenny Craig,
totally.
I would want to put your before and after picture on my wall.
Yes,
to inspire
exactly.
more chubby people to come in here. And
he would be the before and after picture. Like, he would 100%. Be the success story. Yes.
Yeah. So that's what we would want to do, and he's not going to let us do that. And then he won't even acknowledge me on a panel specifically about crowdfunding success. This is hostile. This is hostility that I don't understand, because I don't think I left things on a hostile place with him. I think he honestly, listening to him as I have, I think Doug, I mentioned this to you in private. So let's talk. Doug's entire life as a creative person, I think comes from the sense of being fucked over by people who he gave everything to, who swindled him. Doug created Earthworm Jim. The video game company just needed him to make something to make a video game out of. He came up with Earthworm Jim. Everybody got to work on it, and then the video game company actually said, "Can you sign over the rights to this completely to us? That's the only way this will come out." And Doug said, "What? I give you the rights to this?" And they said, "Yeah, we're going to give you a royalty and everything, but please sign this, because if you don't, all these people that you see, all your friends, all your peers who have been working really hard on Earthworm Jim, we're going to have to fire them. So you want that on your conscience?" And Doug, being 20-something years old, went, "No, okay, of course, I'm going to be a good guy. I'm going to sign over the rights to Earthworm Jim to this corporation." Of course, Earthworm Jim went on to make millions and millions and millions of dollars, and Doug made a pittance and was forced to continue working and doing animation, just doing odd jobs, doing comics. And that's got to hurt.
Yeah, that does hurt.
That's got to make you feel a little bit like Pete Best, looking at Ringo Starr, in the Beatles, and just being like, that was my destiny that just passed me by. So Doug is a man who has rage inside of him. My assessment, my opinion. Doug is someone who has rage inside of him. And I think, I don't know if he decided to take that out on me, but I certainly do not have that kind of rage inside of me. And I really, truly wanted to help Doug TenNapel. And I put my heart into it. I wanted to see Bigfoot Bill do well. I wanted to see Bigfoot Bill become a video game that was bigger than Earthworm Jim. That's what I wanted to say. And I wanted to be like, and Doug is Comicsgate, and you can do it too, because Doug TenNapel did it. You come on over, be brave, be a part of this movement. And what I got instead was I got a good solid shiv in the back, and I got a nice kicking. I got absolutely not. I mean, nothing. There was nothing that came from that. All of that effort, all of that hard work led to people being confused about Comicsgate, led to people wondering where their Doug went, people wondering why Doug would leave, the Christians thinking Comicsgate, because Doug said so, was an anti-Christian movement. Doug TenNapel just setting about to join up with some of the most negative voices on the fringes of Comicsgate, people who actually do YouTube channel live streams fantasizing about murdering me. Doug TenNapel has them on his channel.
Really? That's sad.
Was it because I laughed at Dirtworm Doug because you didn't wash your hands? I mean, I go over it all the time. I'm like, did I tease him? What did I do exactly? I would like to know. But Doug is filled with rage in me, filled with rage. And I don't understand it. I don't think I deserve it. And that's, I think since then, Doug has set himself up as somebody who has made $818,000 on a crowdfunded campaign. And he is this voice that's whispering into the ears of other receptive Christian Comicsgaters and saying, I did it, you can do it too. You don't need Ethan. You don't need Comicsgate. You can do this individually. And Doug is out there telling people that it's safe. Doug is telling people who are currently sheltered within Comicsgate and this fandom and this community and, everything that we're doing, this business enterprise, as it were. We help each other out. We promote each other's books. He's telling them that they don't need it because it's fine out there, because Doug did it. So surely you can do it too. And this is a negative. I have to say, anybody who doesn't want to be a part of Comicsgate can go, and they should go. But if they're going because they think that it isn't snowing out there, that it isn't raining and the waters are rising around the ark, if you think you can step off of Noah's Ark and just be fine, you've got another thing coming. And everyone who does it, everyone who follows Doug's advice, fails. And I see it in their face. I see these guys who were chipper and happy on my live streams, who are now pallid. They have bags under their eyes. They've gained 30 pounds and their hair's a mess. They haven't shaved and they look angry and worried and upset. I don't know why that is, but I'm like, Doug's been talking to you, hasn't he? Doug's been talking to you about the evil of Comicsgate.
Yeah, people put a lot of hope into these projects, and when they don't pan out, it can be a huge disappointment. I can see that. So, but it's such a struggle. I know from being an artist, from working on independent films, all kinds of stuff. Like like what you think the project is going to be, dial that back to about 1% and set your sights there.
No, but dial it back to a negative.
Yeah,
If you
exactly,
think that you're going
exactly.
to do it without the help of Comicsgate.
Or without the help of anyone. Like a lot of
Yeah.
these people think that they can do it on their own, which I don't understand. Even in YouTube, I mean, you're kind of when you're doing YouTube, other people come along and they give you a leg up. Like a lot of people come out and they start punching, like they start swinging at bigger channels and making response videos and stuff like that. And they wonder why their channel never takes off or why, they're never having any kind of success. It's like, you really, you got to make some friends out there. Like this is a social game. So.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
So I just, I think that the network of, kind of appearing on everyone's channels, of getting people excited about Comicsgate, I think it works.
Yeah,
I think it does work. We show that it works, and I want to see that continue to grow. I think that would make me happy. I think that's what mainstream Comicsgate should work towards: more unity, more people who are fighting together, and loyalty. Just stay on the arc. Stay on the arc and help. Get an oar and row, as John Malin says.
I feel like we need a life jacket meme. Like, here you go. Here's your consolation. Here's your consolation prize.
See ya.
Good luck.
Yeah.
So I hope you found that discussion interesting. If you did, please leave a like on my video. If you are new here, you could subscribe to the channel. I'm going to be crowdfunding a book myself soon enough, probably around February after the first of the year. It's called D-Smashers. It's about a bunch of drug addicts that save the world. So it is very politically... Well, maybe that's politically correct these days. Yeah, it's about a bunch of losers who save the world. Yeah, totally politically correct. So look forward to that. And I will see you in the next video.